Well, hello and welcome. I am Kimon Edwards from SMS Novel, and I'm so glad to be hosting this video podcast today as we interview the authors of the new group book, Eyes of Death 2. I'm joined here with the authors for a time of sharing, questions, and the live reading of the new book. SMS Group Book allows writers from all across the country to join together and meet online, write a book as a group over 60 days. This book is special because it is the sequel of the original novel, Eyes of Death, written by Don Vasicek, who we also have here on the call today. Hi, Don.
Hello, Kimon. How are you?
I'm good. And you?
Good, thank you.
All right. So a little bit about the book. The original book focuses on teenager Hannah Powers, a 17-year-old from Chicago. When Hannah sustains a head injury, her prom queen world turns from white to black. During her best friend Emily's funeral, she sees a white-gray ghost image radiating around Emily's casket, but no outline around Emily. This convinces Hannah that she is brain damaged, even though her neuropsychologist says she is not. Then she is plunged into a terrifying world of being able to predict death before it happens without being able to do anything about it. But now we have the sequel. The Eyes of Death explores Hannah 1 year older, now in college, exploring her new powers with a mysterious figure from her past coming back to threaten everything she loves. Now, we are pleased today to have the authors of the sequel, Geraldine Winstead. We don't have Sarah with us today. She, had some challenges, and unfortunately, we're not able to have her here on the call. But we also have Monica Lynch, Letitia Hobley, and as I pointed out before, Don Vasicek. Welcome, lovely authors.
Thank you.
Hello.
How are you doing today?
Doing well.
Terrific. Glad
Good.
to be here.
I suspect you're feeling very good about this book. There's so much that we have to talk about. But first, I'd love to hear from each one of you. What caused you to take part of this book, and what was your writing experience before this project?
Well, I chose to take part into it because I was looking to expand my writing experience and to get into some other professional forms of writing. My previous writing experience was just personal writing. I just found a love from writing from a child. So I have notebooks and notebooks of just journaling and writing short stories, just different things that I did for my own personal pleasure.
How about you, Geraldine?
So I've been, like Letitia, I've been writing since I was little, but it's only in the last 8 years I got really serious about it, or maybe the last 10 years. And I have been working as a writer. I finished my debut novel. I got an agent. I started attending conferences, and then I started doing freelance ghostwriting and contract editing and all this sort of thing on Upwork for immediate income, while my Harry Potter style novel slowly makes its way towards publication, and there's a publisher looking at it right now. And I saw this come through the SMS thing on Meetup, and I didn't really know what it was because SMS is a text form of noveling, and so I thought we were going to be doing that. But then it turns out we were doing a group book, and I was really interested in this because I'd never done it before, and it establishes us all as published authors, and so that was a really big deal to me.
So most of my writing experience has been academic. I have written some personal, like short stories and some poems and things like that. And I have sort of an idea to write a personal book, but it's just so personal. And so I think putting it on the page is kind of like pretty frightening. But this was really great because the idea was already there. It wasn't something that was coming like directly out of me, and so it was like taking someone else's sort of idea and giving it life. It just struck me as really interesting. The other part of my writing experience comes from, I'm an English teacher. I taught high school English, including like AP AP Language and Composition. So I taught kids rhetoric, and we did a lot of narratives as rhetoric. So a lot of my writing comes from teaching other people how to write. And so it was really fun to be able to sort of be on the other side of that, and have other people say, well, maybe you got to do it this way, or, people giving me advice on my own writing. So it was a really great experience to do this way.
Yeah. Okay. That's all three experiences. Well, four, we don't have Sarah with us today, but coming together to write this book, I think it was bound to be, very interesting, based on the background where you're coming from. So I would love to hear from each of you, though. What was the writing process like?
I found the writing process, writing with the group, very easy. It was very fun. We got to be creative. We got to brainstorm, and it was just a really fun experience.
Yeah, I found it really different because I've written 5 novels now, and I'm used to just having complete creative control. And so it was interesting to each write our own parts, and we went back and forth and had deadlines through the whole novel. So when one person wrote a part, the next person had to go with the direction they had just written and try to make it flow. But I found it really interesting to do all the brainstorming together and the decision making and all that. So it was very, very different from when I'm writing my own novel. It was an interesting experience.
Yeah, I agree with Geraldine. It was like Christmas morning, waiting for the person before you to give you that gift so that you could open it and see what was going to happen next, because you would put your writing in and hope that everyone was on board with what you wrote, and but then seeing it was a lot of fun to watch the twists and turns as they developed, to see what kinds of details we each added, and figuring out ways to make sure that we all flowed together, and that everybody, our details didn't cross each other and not make sense. It was not as hard as I thought it would be. But it was challenging too. I think I got really wrapped up too in wait, I only have a day to do this. And then it's oh, well, I could do this in a day. So yeah, there was a lot of that. There was a lot of apprehension, but in the end, it just really turned out to be extremely positive, an extremely positive feeling every week.
Yeah, that's a good way to describe it, as that Christmas gift, you're waiting for it, waiting to open it, because you don't know what's coming next. But you know that whatever you see, you're going to have to write based on what it must have been something interesting. And even I'm excited. I'd probably want to do something like that one day. So let's go ahead and talk about the main character, Hannah. We know that from the last book, she has the unique telepathic powers, being able to sense and see death. What type of research went into the development of the character for this story?
I would like to ask too, at some point, where did Don come up with the idea for this originally, for this character with these powers? So we're going to say Letitia?
Go ahead.
We had, I can try to answer a little bit. We had originally, I think it was Letitia's idea to have the different characters have different viewpoints on death, so that it wasn't a monolith, or you know what I mean, so that there was a real exploration of different views on what happens when we die. And so it became something more of an exploratory thing. As far as research goes, I don't know that we researched as much of that. I do know that we researched a lot for the character Nurse Riley, who becomes much more familiar in the sequel than she was in the first book. and her religious beliefs. I think there was a lot of research surrounding that particular character because she was so fleshed out in this book.
Yeah, and something funny that happened is, Hannah can see energy around people, which is called an aura. And so we ended up researching some about auras, and then we were writing, and the word aura was in there a million times. And our coach, Joe, had to say, by the way, you guys are using this word too much. And I was like, but that's her whole power. So I went back to the first book and looked at it again. And Dawn somehow wrote that whole first book and only mentioned aura twice. But it's all about Hannah seeing this energy right around people, right? And being able to tell when they're about to die. And so that was kind of funny, because then we had to all go through and find different ways to use that word and to rewrite a little bit. And, and so we just kind of played around with the idea of those kind of gifts. What is it like to see energy? I mean, we didn't go deep into it, but we did some research on people's views on death, and then also sort of a gift like that where you can actually see someone's aura around them, the colors, that sort of thing.
That was a big deal with me. Movie The Sixth Sense gave me the idea to write this story. Only I wanted to do something different that is part of our lives, whether we realize it or not. Our bodies give off energy, which create different colors that circulate around us, our auras. And there's a lot of people who, I don't know about a lot of people, but many people can read auras, and they key on the colors and what the colors are doing. And I didn't want to focus on that much in the novel, because I kind of wanted the reader to sort of figure that out on their own. And that's why I didn't mention it much. But there are people who can, I think, can't prove it, I don't know of anyone, but who can read auras and tell that somebody's going to die just by the colors that are circulating around them.
It's an interesting thing. Like I think I had some experience with people who can actually see auras and work in energy work and can send Reiki healing to people. And I've been actually working on developing my chakras and my ability to work with chi. So it's definitely real. It's definitely real. And I'm so thrilled that there's like a book that's going to be like a popular book that is dealing with these sort of metaphysical things that I think the world is starting to really awaken to. I think it's going to become more and more mainstream for people to understand what it is and that it's real and how that energy connects us all.
Yeah, and I just read an article recently about a cat in a hospice that can tell when someone's about to die. They observed this cat would go to the next person that's about to die and like hang out with them and comfort them. So we kind of tied a little bit of that in because we have a hospice, and so we have Nurse Riley who works there, and so we decided to sort of give her like the idea that she maybe could sense when someone was about to die, and not in the same way as Hannah, but just because she works with hospice patients full time. And that idea for me came from that article I read about that cat. So, there are some things like this happening.
But my theory based on observation, not research or science. I think there are what I call therapy animals. We have a cat, Gray Tabby. If we have an illness in the house or someone isn't feeling very good, she's right there. She's right there with us. And I think, like airports where some people are afraid to fly and they have dogs that can help calm them, therapy dogs. So we're going to see more and more of that, because I think animals can perceive more than maybe we give them credit for.
Yeah, I definitely believe that also. And that's why this story is so interesting. And then what makes it even more interesting is that it speaks about this thing that we don't really have a lot of knowledge about, death. And somebody is here predicting death. So we move into our next question. How was the choice made, though, for this sequel to take place so soon after the first story? And what was the motivation for placing her in college in this sequel? Monica, I'd like to begin with you.
I think if I can remember back 3 months ago, I think we felt like there were so many unanswered questions in the first book that we wanted a small gap of time where she had some time to figure out a little bit of stuff about what was going on with her, but she was still so shaken up at the end of the first book with the advent of this power that she had only had for, I think, maybe 3 months in the first book, 3 to 6 months. And we had a hard time like skipping so much time with her having been sort of in turmoil. And so I think we just wanted to show her in her own space, which was off to college, but still learning, still growing, still trying to figure out what she was experiencing exactly, because she really didn't understand it at the end of the first book. And I think we just felt sympathy for her and we wanted to walk her through it. I think that was my feeling. That was my takeaway from our early discussions, but maybe someone else has a different idea.
Well, I remember specifically, Monica, that you had noticed in the first book a particular scene where I think Nurse Riley asks Hannah's mother, Ashley, a question, and it goes unanswered and there's some uncertainty. And you brought up the fact that we could tie into that particular scene that happened. And so we were kind of using like a fish hook to take a little piece of the first book and move it into the second book. We were trying to do that. And then, like you said, it's that same thing where she's just dealing with this. So we didn't want to see her 10 years later in a successful career. We wanted to see how did she deal with this right after this happened at the end of high school? Like, how did she deal with this going into college? This is her whole life and it's such a huge change. And so we wanted to watch that process.
I also feel like it was a natural, we decided it would be a natural positive transition to have her character where it wasn't always about the auras and deaths, to see her developing as a young woman, starting on a new path, a new part of her life, starting college, meeting new people, and just in a different environment. So I felt like that was important to just allow Hannah to be Hannah without always Hannah and the death auras or her telepathic abilities, or just learning what that was to her. But I felt like it was a natural transition for her to just be a young lady.
Yeah. And as I said before, death is such a big, huge topic. How did each of you approach this topic in your individual writing? We continue with you, Letitia.
I just approached death like I just did it how I would approach death, like mourn it, evaluate it, look at it, and then to let it go. So that's kind of the perspective that I brought into it, because I don't believe that what is considered death is the end. So I just brought that perspective in.
Yeah. What about you, Geraldine?
And
John, we want to get something from you on this question as well, because you wrote the first book, and we just want to know how did you bring in death and write about it like this. But Geraldine, let's hear your thoughts.
I read very widely, and I read a lot of spiritual books and metaphysical topics and the Bible and like all sorts of different things. And so I already had some knowledge of different views of death, plus people I know, interactions I've had. I know people who believe in reincarnation, and I know all different viewpoints. That's just one of them. There's also the Christian viewpoint, and then there's different Christian viewpoints actually, wondering about it. And then I also have been reading about science and how they say energy it always goes somewhere. It doesn't die. So when we pass away, the energy that is our spirit goes somewhere, like it doesn't just snuff out, So I have, let's just say I'm always reading new ideas and thoughts about it. So I was really interested in researching and exploring each character and how we thought they would think about it, and then to try to bring that out in the book. And that was really interesting because we have like one character is just into science, and one character's into metaphysics, and one character is very spiritual. And then Ashley, Hannah's mom, doesn't even want to think about it because she lost her husband, you know. So it was fascinating to try to step into each character's shoes and say, how would they see it, you know, and then to share that with Hannah.
Yeah. Yeah. Monica, and then, Dawn.
Yeah, it was a synchronistic sort of thing for me. I signed up to do this, and then the book became clear what we would be writing. And then when I read the first book, I thought, wow, this is extremely synchronistic, because I had actually started looking into becoming a death doula. So I was already on this path of like, what does happen? You know, what does happen? Where does the energy go? And so when this came along and we decided to make it a real exploration, I was really excited to sort of share some of the lesser sort of accepted views or things that aren't exactly, you know, really out there. I really appreciated that we brought in some things some ideas that aren't necessarily Western in their basis, in their foundation. So yeah, that's what I have to say about that. It was very cool. It was I really appreciated the way we did it. That was good.
Dawn, what about you? I want to get your views as well.
Okay, I've been listening so intently that I lost track of what your question was. I'm sorry. It's probably all due to my age. I'm just joking. What views on what specifically?
How did you approach the topic of death, in the writing? What was your approach like?
I've had some life experiences with respect to death that were extraordinary. And based on those experiences, it put me in a position with death. It just boils down to this. What is. Someone dies, there isn't anything you can do about it. Like my dad died, 2 weeks later, my twin brother died, 2 weeks later, my mother died. And each time I had to take care of what belonged to them. And like I was going through dad's stuff, and I never knew this, but he had a knife collection, which, you know, I didn't know that. So I looked at those knives that I found, and I thought, who do these knives mean most to? My dad. Dad's gone. He doesn't need these anymore. So what should I do with them? So my point is, I have a pretty, I hope it's not perceived as cold with respect to death, but I'm very, I can't think of the word right off, but I'm very accepting of death. It's part of life to me. And as Letitia said earlier, I believe that there's something beyond death, something very powerful that most of us don't have that much of awareness about. So I wanted to show in the eyes of death how these different individuals, characters in the story, dealt with death.
Yeah.
As they dealt with it.
Yeah, that's really interesting. And I myself, just to say, I am still grappling with basically dealing with death. And I think this is why I find even this podcast much more interesting than, any other that I've dealt with, because I just recently lost my grandfather. And, I spoke with him on the phone like about 2 hours before his death. And I'm still just wondering how did this happen? And I'm not very as accepting as Don is, but I hope I'll get there. And I'm just trying to find out, what happens after death, just like everybody else. And I think that is why this is so interesting to me, this book, this concept. But let's continue into the next question. So there are a few new characters in this sequel, in the new story, and some of the old ones. Let's talk about some of the new characters and what do you feel like they brought to the story, some of the new characters that you had.
Well, one of the original ideas was that Hannah should have a boyfriend in college, but we decided, what if instead of a boyfriend, she just had a friend, a guy who was a friend, And so we decided to explore it that way. And so then we had all sorts of fun. A couple of us are from Colorado. So we made him from Colorado and just a laid back hippie guy who's into marijuana and who's studying all the uses for hemp and THC and CBD. And it was just a lot of fun to create someone who was open, because Hannah's gift was so out there, like no one else would get it, but we wanted to create a character who would get it and accept her like right away.
One of the characters that I really liked was Coach Tran, because I felt like that was her running coach. It was kind of she was kind of the zen for Hannah. When she was out there running, she really didn't think about anything. And I felt like Coach Tran, we brought some cultural diversity with her being Vietnamese, Asian. And so it was just a little bit cool to kind of see the different diversity of the characters and just the inner peace that Coach Tran brought to Hannah as she's transitioning and learning how to deal with everything that's going on in her life. There was those moments of peace where she can just let everything go and just be free.
Yeah, Monica?
I'm going to stay away from any antagonistic characters right now. And I'm going to go with Nurse Riley Raven. She's not really a new character, but she was not fleshed out in the first book. And I wanted her to be a different branch of Christianity. And so I was really happy with Sarah, who is not here, unfortunately, because I really wanted her to talk about this. I wanted to hear her research into this and how she learned so much about root working, and how hoodoo and voodoo are branches of Christianity that bring in indigenous religion melded with Christianity, right? And so it was really fun to create someone who was from just shared a different way. Like, I don't think I haven't read a lot of books that draw characters like that. So it was really fun to bring her in and to give Hannah a mentor, someone who understands more metaphysical things than like most of the people that Hannah's in contact with. They don't really understand her gift. Even her mother doesn't really quite know what to make of it. I really enjoyed having this character who, was just very quietly like her teacher. Like, she was the rock for her, all along. And you didn't know that she was in the first book, but you discover that she was in the second book. Yeah, she's a good character.
Yeah, and what do you want the reader, say me, who is actually dealing with a death in my family right now? So what do you want the reader to take away from the major topic of dealing with death, the human struggle to fight it, and also the acceptance, as Don Vasicek also said, of death? Letitia, let's begin with you.
I would say I would want my reader to take away to be open-minded about death, and just be able to be open-minded in the aspect of accepting things that you can't change. Like, you have no power of when, where, how death is going to happen. So why ponder over it or create unnecessary negative energy around death when it's something that none of us can control? So just having an accepting heart and mind around just the topic of death, because it's out of our control, yet we all know at some point in time that it will be something that we will face.
Yeah, that's very interesting. That's good. Geraldine, do you share the same thoughts?
Yeah, and actually, there's a second message in the book, and that is sometimes, like, we all have giftings, and what do you do with it? And what does it mean? And so Hannah has to figure out, she can predict when someone's about to die, but can she do something to change it? And should she try or not? And then if she can't do anything to change it, then why does she have this gift? And why was it developed in her? And what is she supposed to do with it? And I think everybody has some sort of gift like that and a purpose. And so I think part of it is just figuring out what it is it for, how can we grow in that area, how can we be used by a higher power, for the good for others. And so those two are linked together, the message. So I think it kind of explores both those things.
Yeah. And Monica?
I think I have a sort of an idea that it's we are all going to do it. And life is nothing but change. And death is another change that we will go through. And we don't know what's on the other side of that change, just like all the changes that we go through in life. It's funny because right before we started, I found out suddenly that I had to move. I had to move within 30 days. And that was a difficult change, and I didn't know what my life was going to be like. So I just had that experience of sort of a death and rebirth of the old me into the new me, and I was like, well, why can't these changes in life really just be metaphorical for that last human change that we're going to go through? I'm sure it's not the end. Wherever the soul ends up, whatever happens to the energy, the soul, wherever it goes after this, it's certainly not the end.
And now the new you is an author. So that's exciting.
Yes.
Yeah. So what was your favorite part for each of you? What was your favorite part in the writing process? And also, what was the most difficult in your opinion?
I would say my most favorite part of it was just tapping into my inner child and just having fun, just letting go and just having fun and just being myself. That was probably the most fun part about it. And also Monday nights meeting with these ladies and brainstorming and laughing. Monica would have some of the funniest, most imaginative ideas for some of the different characters or the directions we were moving in. So kind of going back and forth with that. And that it was just a really fun experience to just open myself to a group process. Probably the most difficult part, I really wouldn't say it was difficult, more of a challenge for me, was when I took on a 3-part writing section, because we had some writers leave and we had to transition, and it was, I took it on like, oh yes, I know I can do it. And then when you get it, it's like, oh my God, I have 3 parts to write. But I just, fed myself positive vibrations, positive energy, told myself how you can do it, and I did it. So that was just a great opportunity to work with other writers, different backgrounds. So it was just overall a very positive experience.
I think for me, the funnest part was having a group of people to brainstorm ideas with and to just go back and forth and talk through it. And the most challenging part for me, having written novels, is having to give up control. Because like I said, I'm used to having complete creative control. And if I don't like a part, I go back and change it, and I go the direction I want to go, and then I decide what I want to do. And it was so different to not be in control of a whole novel and to just have to go with the flow and sometimes we would we would decide together that a part was going to go a certain way. But then when you're actually writing it, your creativity just comes out, and sometimes it goes somewhere a little different. So then we come back to write it and we're like, wait a minute, that's not what we decided, you know? So, okay, well, this is how it is now. What can we do to, you know, keep it going? And then it was challenging too, the deadlines. And, you know, the group book is structured in different ways, but in this particular way that we did it, we had several writers drop out. So then there was just 4 of us, and it was like passing a baton. And each time we had to write our section, and sometimes we only had 24 hours to get it done, and sometimes we had 2 days. And so because we had such few people, we stretched it out to 2 months instead of the normal 1 month, you know, to get it done. But it was quite a challenge. We had to stay on top of the calendar. Who's writing next? Okay, I got my part done. Go, you know, this kind of thing. So that was an interesting challenge.
Yeah. How about you, Monica?
Yeah, it was totally like a relay race. Here, take the baton, run, go. Yeah, the part, it was the part I liked the most, and then the most challenging part. These people didn't exist, and now they do. That was both the best part and the most challenging part. You know, how do you create these people and stay with them? And now they're like part of my life. Like, I wake up and I'm like, what would Hannah do?
That's hilarious.
But I also agree with Geraldine too about the when you started writing, it was like, but I don't want to write it like that. I want to do this. And then you just do it and you hope that everybody else is okay with it. You know, it's like, if they don't like it, we can talk about it on Monday. We can figure out how to change it or whatever. But there was that. But again, the same thing that Letitia said too, it was so much fun to get together and hash things out and just figure out where we had already been and where we were headed and how we wanted to keep it moving forward. It was definitely, I can't think of any negatives. I really can't. It was an excellent experience.
Yeah, and I think that answers my next question, Monica, because I was about to ask now, do you feel like writing as a group made it easier or more difficult? And what were some of the challenges of writing this way?
Did you want me to just keep going?
Yeah, sure.
Because I think that they being the other 3 women held me accountable. Would I have sat and written the pages that I wrote on my own? I don't know, right? This is a real self-discipline question. And so I think this process really helped me explore that part of myself. Like, what stops me from writing for myself? And so that their accountability really made the process easier for me. I think I'm a good writer, but what I think, and I like to write, but it's also like, when you're birthing something like this, I tend to let the fear of what other people are going to think about what I've written get in the way. And this just really sort of helped because there was this cushion of the core of us, you know, being able to discuss the things that were on the page before it goes out to a larger audience. That helped me tremendously.
Yeah, Letitia, how about you?
I felt the group experience, it was a very, like I said, I came into it with an open mind. So I was a lot more flexible versus this is how I am and this is how I feel. I just wanted to be open-minded because I knew that I'd be working with a lot of different personalities and different characteristics. So it just made it easier for me to just flow like water. Like, if you're going to move in this direction, well, that's fine, as long as it's all a group collective and still having respect for the original author, for Donald. So that was pretty interesting, and just balancing it because like what Monica was saying, the personal accountability, I like that. It's like and having to communicate with other people, because like me, I enjoy my own energy. So having to communicate and deal with balancing other people and different writing schedules and times and different things. So it was just a great experience personally and as a group.
All right, and Geraldine?
I would have to say too, it was interesting because none of us knew each other. So we all came to do this and we were just meeting each other for the first time, and we all come from different levels and different backgrounds. And so that was really unusual because I think we were a little shy at first, and then we got to know each other by creating a creative work together. And so that was, I think now we have very warm feelings because we've created this thing together, and it was really fun. And I also think it would be interesting to take like my writers group, who we know each other very well. What would happen if that group wrote a novel together with people you know? And
I'm in, Geraldine. I'm in.
Are you in? Okay, so I thought, I don't know if you'd end up fighting all the time because you already know those people so well, or would it be interesting to pass the baton, with people you're familiar with and you know how they write. And so I don't know, I'm curious about it. So it'd be fun to do some more.
Mm-hmm. Oh, I'm glad that you're getting new ideas from just working together. And I think that's what happens, Do you feel like, okay, let's just get into some of the drama now. What writer did you appreciate the most or help you the most or you think helped you the most during the process?
I have some drama. You want some drama?
Sure.
We didn't have a lot of drama, but I got into a little bit of drama because we had another writer named Carlin who was with us for a while, but then he had family emergencies, so he had to drop out. But so we were setting the story in Chicago, and I lived in Chicago when I was in high school, and he had made some reference to how the people call the strong wind the hawk in Chicago. And so we were leaving comments for each other on Google, and the comments just went back and forth, started getting really long. Our coach had to say, okay, let's stop leaving comments for each other. I was like, okay, I'm from Chicago. I never heard the hawk. I've never heard anybody, refer to the hawk. And I contacted my brother, who still lives in the area. I said, have you ever heard of this? And he said, no, I've never heard of that. And I said, so I was like, why are we putting a reference that anybody who lives in Chicago is going to look at that and say, they don't know what they're talking about. We don't talk like that. But then Carlin did some research, and he found articles saying that, yes, sometimes people refer to this wind as the hawk. And some article I found said, most people in Chicago don't realize this or don't know about it, right? So we were both right. So I guess there are some people who call it the hawk, and a lot of people in Chicago who've never heard of that. So that was kind of funny, and it kind of got going, and our coach had to tell us to stop.
Yeah, so
the hawk became a character.
Mm-hmm.
And we left the hawk in. I mean, it kind of worked in the novel, so we left it in. So all you Chicagoans who never heard of it, it's a real thing.
Okay, and so did you appreciate this writer the most, or do you think they helped you during the process of writing?
One of the things that I think that we all did so well together because of Letitia has fabulous ideas. Like, she has such creative, I'm like, where did she, like, how, why, where? And then like Geraldine, when we had to make the outline, I think the rest of us are all like, we don't know what that is. And I've never done this before, and I don't even know how to go about doing what he's asking us to do. But Geraldine, like, she did this beautiful outline, and it was really cool the way that we all sort of looked, and Joe did like probably most of it, like pulled from all the outlines, different things, and added them. But like Geraldine just had her brain just put that together for us, and it made it so much easier to write because we had a basic understanding of where we were going. Like, certain details we weren't sure of. Like, we didn't know how the book was going to end when we started. We had no idea what that was going to look like because it was just left open-ended. But Sarah like brought in all these, like, her writing is so detailed and like so beautifully descriptive, and it just all came together because it felt like we all had just really, I hopefully I added some stupid dad jokes to the book. Like that was my goal, was to add some lightness, right, to make it, like what real life would be like, rather than just all heavy, but I think because we all came with such different strengths, we all just fell into place like a puzzle. That was my perception of how we work together. I can't say I have someone who gave the most or did the most. I think we all fell in really well together.
And I really
Right.
liked Letitia was very inspiring too, because I think, was this your first time to write a novel, Letitia? And so we'd have our Monday night meetings and she's like, man, this is so much fun. I just love it. I feel so good. And so it reminded me of the creative charge you get when you really get into your own creative writing and how it just fills you up. And so that I enjoyed that. Her charged me, you know, and it felt good. And I also liked how each person, like Sarah, was it Sarah or you, Monica, who really developed Nurse Riley?
Sorry. I think I got to introduce her in this book, which was a gift for me. And Sarah did a lot of development throughout the middle of the book, and I got to close her out.
So it's interesting to see this really unusual character that we only barely met in the first book really get deep into who she was and how both of you ladies specifically really developed her. And I found that really fascinating. I enjoyed reading those parts and like just letting you guys take off with that character and this how you did it. I enjoyed that a lot.
At one point I was like, I need this woman in my life. I want her to be real right now.
That's right.
Good, Letitia, what about you?
Okay. I agree with everything that the ladies have said. Working in a group, everybody brought something so awesome to the table. So it was just really an experience where I was kind of a sponge and I just allowed myself to absorb. And they all helped me. Jerry Lynn helped me with third person writing and learning how to write in past tense. And for me, that was a little bit of a challenge because I'm here in the present moment. So having to identify that and, get a, focus on, okay, this is what needs to be done. And she helped me with some editing as a new writer, as well as Monica. She was in there with the English teacher. No, that's incorrect. This is how it should be. So it was fun having her creative ideals flow through, because we would be cracking up sometimes because she would have these like huge vibrant ideals, and sometimes Jerry would be like, that doesn't quite work, and she's like, well, okay, well let's go back to the drawing board. And so it was just fun to play off of each other. And with Sarah, she's so very quiet, but then when you read her writing, it's like, wow, or just some of the knowledge that she came with about just like they said, the root work and developing the Nurse Riley character with her different take on spirituality. So that was just really interesting and fun to be a part of.
All right, so for the final question now, what do you hope the reader will learn or be challenged from reading this book? Jarlyn, I'll start with you.
I would say the same answer I gave earlier, just that I believe that we each have something to bring, a gift and a purpose, and learning what that is and coming into who we are. And that's like a special magic within each of us. And then learning how to be fully in that. And for me, I believe in God, in a creator, higher power, and just learning to trust him or her, however you want to refer to him, learning to trust him and to know that we're here for a purpose, and discovering what our own magic is, what our own giftings are, and how we can help others with it. So I don't know, I think for me, that's kind of a central message.
Monica?
I just want to tack on to that because I think I totally agree. I think in the end, that's kind of what the idea is self-discovery and really digging deep into who we are. But also, like, there's not one path, right? There are so many different paths to get to that knowledge. And so it becomes like an open-mindedness and accepting other people's paths and whatever walk they happen to be on. They're on the same journey of self-discovery. They're just walking a different path. And I think that's a really beautiful thing that came out of this book too. Oh, and that it's lifelong, right? It doesn't just stop.
For me, I would want the reader, like I touched on before, just acceptance of things that you can't control, like just learning how to have that inner peace of knowing, like, this is something that I can't control. I may not know everything about what's happening, but to be able to acknowledge your feelings, acknowledge what you're going through, but still be able to accept it, and to also be open-minded to things that you may not have experienced or may not have been around, but just having an open mind to, like you said, there's so many different perspectives and different walks of life. Just having that openness to, like, wow, I could really learn something, or how could maybe, taking some of that back and questioning yourself, like, well, what is death, or what is my perspective on death? Just taking that back and for personal review and personal reflection.
Yeah, that's, great stuff. So we're finished with the harder questions. And, this definitely sounds like such a fun project. Now, let's have a bit more fun, and we will play I Am Most Like. Now, I will name a character in the book, and then you will tell me one similarity that you have with the character in real life, and one major difference that you have with the character. So one similarity and one difference with the character. First character I'm going to name is, of course, Hannah. What do you think? You're similar to her, with in real life, or what's the difference between you both? Letitia, we continue with you.
With Hannah, my similarity would be her bravery. Like, she had a lot going on, and she just kept continuing to take personal accountability, like for some of the things, like with her powers, of taking the step further of doing the research, like, why is this happening? What is going on? And how am I affecting other people? And how can I use this for the greater good of all? So that's what I would take as a similarity of hers. Something that would be opposite would be, she came from completely different walk of life than what I have lived. So it's like she's completely opposite of me, as in form as of what she's lived in her life. But the bravery part is where I connect with her.
Yeah. How about you, Monica?
I'm so much older than her, and I've been through so many different things, but I think I identified at some point in my life. I can definitely identify with not being able to accept when your loved ones die, and try and wish you could change it somehow. Like wanting control over something that you don't have any control over. That was a hard lesson for me to learn in life. So I'm going to leave it there, because I don't want to get in the end. I don't want to talk about the end.
I think for me, I'm like Hannah in the sense that I have had unusual spiritual experiences my whole life, actually, which has led me down an unusual path. And so now I'm a Christian mystic and a Quaker, and I'm very open to those things because I know there's a lot more going on than what we can see, hear, taste, and smell on this earth, because I've experienced it. So and also just how she asks questions about it. And that's what happened to me. I started asking questions. Well, why? This doesn't fit with the religion I've been brought up in. So where are the answers? You know what I mean? So that wanting to know and to learn and to discover. As far as how I'm not like her, I mean, she's into running and I'm not into sports at all. I'm an artist and into theater and, painting and writing and all that. I do not like running at all. So.
Yeah. And how about Ashley? You can continue.
Okay. I feel like I really, okay. So Ashley's her mom. I don't relate to her really because she's she is an entrepreneur. So, and I'm an entrepreneur. I've done some small businesses. So if I were to relate to Ashley, it would be in that way and just being a businesswoman. But Ashley's way more successful than I ever was, and she's like totally on top of it and wearing top of the line suits and like immaculate with makeup and stuff. That's not me at all. But yeah.
Letitia?
I would say I could relate with Ashley with the fact that she likes to help people. She has a hospice, so she has a caring heart to, aid others in as they're going through transition, to make them as comfortable as they can possibly be. And, they're surrounded by love, and and they're at peace, as they're transitioning through their stages of death. So that's what I could relate with her.
And Monica?
I don't relate to Ashley at all. I don't get her as a person. She would not be someone that I would hang out with. I just don't know. I don't relate to her at all. She was a fun character to draw, though. In that way, I relate to her.
Well, all right. How about Nurse Riley? Is it Riley or Riley?
Nurse Riley.
Nurse Riley, all right. How about Nurse Riley? How are you similar to her?
I think I relate. Oh, sorry. Go ahead, Letitia.
Thank you. Sorry about that. What I relate with Nurse Riley is her faith. Like, she has tremendous faith, unshakable faith. It doesn't matter what she's going through or the people around her. She has her faith in what she believes, and she stands strong in that. So that is definitely where I relate with her.
Yeah, me too, because I grew up in a more of a rigid religious mindset, and yet Nurse Riley she's had spiritual experiences, so she's expanded beyond a box, but yet, so even though she's open to some of the more spiritual stuff, she still completely trusts God, and that God has this, and that she can trust him in everything. And so I relate most to her, I think, because I no longer fit in that rigid, box that I was raised in. But I still trust God, and I'm very open more to more metaphysical and spiritual topics, because like I said, I've experienced some of that stuff, and yet through it all, my faith in God is unshaken.
I think I relate to her on a lot of different levels. I'm gonna say more of the metaphysical part than the faith part of what her beliefs are, and she's a teacher, and so that's always going to be something that's dear to my heart, right? She's a nurse, but she's a teacher for Hannah, a mentor, so to speak, or even, so to me, that character, someone who helps someone through crises in their life, is yeah, that's a good thing. I get that I relate to. Yeah. You're muted, Kimon.
Yeah, I'm saying for the final person, Julian Starr, how are you similar to, that character? Geraldine, starting with you.
Okay, I discovered in my 40s that I'm quite hippie-ish. I didn't really know that earlier, but now I admit that there's definitely a hippie side to me that's just likes to walk barefoot and make my own clothes and do all natural and go with the flow, and just is open to that there's way more in this earth than any of us can know, that sort of thing. So I loved that part of him, and but I'm definitely not like him in the sense that I'm not really into weed or anything like that. But anyway, that's how I'm like him more, is just that laid back, go with the flow, hippie vibe a little bit.
Letitia?
Well, I love that Julian, there is no box with Julian. Like, he is who he is, and I mean, he has no qualms about it. It's like, I like that he's able, what I can relate to, that he's able to just be himself, and he's happy with that. Like, he doesn't care about what other people think about, or, think about him as a person. He just is happy with who he is. And so I think that's just very important, to be okay with yourself, no matter what anybody else thinks.
Yeah, and what's the difference between, him and you?
Well, what's the difference? He's a difference would be because I definitely love his hippie vibes. I love all the natural. I love all that. A difference would maybe be his family has a whole marijuana business, so that would be something completely that yeah, they have their own business farm. They have their own stuff going on, so that's just something a little bit completely opposite of what of my lifestyle is like.
Yeah, and how about you, Monica?
Well, I'm the queen of bad jokes. And Julian tries so hard to tell funny jokes, and they're dad jokes. So I'm going to go there. I agree. I love his free spirit and all of those things, but the humor, I think I tried to put my sense of humor a little bit into some of the things that he says and does, but like, yeah, there are always those people go, oh, really? Like, we want to laugh because we like you, but no.
But no. Okay, all right. So nice. At this time now, we want to have a reading from the book. I have a preliminary draft of the book, and not even the authors have seen this. This comes from chapter 1, and this portion was written by Geraldine. Yes. All right. So I'm going to go ahead and do a reading, a portion of it. Hannah was startled from her books and the notes on her desk, a tiny bit of moisture leaving a dark stain on her notebook. Her pen clattered to the floor. She had dozed again while studying. Whoa, bad dream. Tessa, her science nerd roommate, entered the small dorm room filled with a standard blonde wood furniture of tall beds, desks, and dressers, 2 of each. Tessa removed and polished her dark purple-framed rectangular glasses with a thin blue cloth, her brown, frizzy hair in a messy scrunchie bun as usual. Weird dream? You know I had long blonde hair before. Typical J. Crew, you might say. Hannah's voice had an edge. She tucked her straight lavender cut behind her ear on the right side of her head. The left side of her head was shaved into a pattern of lines and angles, also lavender. Her mom hated her new look. Hannah loved it. It fit her new self. J. Crew Hannah was gone. You don't say. I would never have guessed. You don't seem the type. I'm not sure why. Tessa Howard was always matter-of-fact and honest, something Hannah really liked in her. They'd gotten along well in their 2 months as a freshman at Northwestern U Chicago. Hannah hadn't told her roommate anything about her strange, awful experiences last year, especially that her best friend, Emily, had died right in front of her, hit by a car, the both of them smashing into a tree. And she would never tell of the pale, ghostly image she'd seen around Emily exactly before it happened. While she tried to forget death, her awareness of its presence still felt like a curse. She gathered her books quickly, not meaning for her roommate to see them. Too late. Auras, huh? Tessa had already scanned several titles on the small stack of library books. You know all that stuff is woo-woo, right? Pseudoscience, there's no evidence for it whatsoever, dude. Sure, Tess, whatever. Hannah wasn't in the mood. She knew better. It's for an assignment in my creative writing class, she lied as she quickly got ready for bed. Tessa headed into the bathroom, linking her head with the one next door. Linking her room with the one next door. Hannah wasn't about to share that she'd spent all summer searching out books to try to figure this out. Why did this happen to her? She wasn't anything special. And why did it happen when her best friend died? Why not after her father, a highly respected judge, was murdered years ago? Hannah caught the choke in her throat and pushed the tight ball of grief back down to her gut. She took a deep breath and climbed onto her bed. Hannah's thoughts drifted again. Why did she now have to avoid the hospice in her mom-owned and hospice her mom owned and managed, or her mom's dog rescue foundation for that matter. Because she was tired of seeing the horrible blue-white sparks, she didn't need to see who would die next, human or canine. It happened too often in those places. What was she supposed to do with this anyways? She sighed and flipped toward the wall. Her pastel lavender clippings swirled around the room, covering every single person with a pulsing, sparkling lilac aura. Was everyone about to die? And that's where that part ends. Ladies, how do you feel about hearing the story? How does that make you feel? Hearing it for the first time.
I can't wait to read it.
Congratulations. That's awesome. That
It threw
was
me a little.
awesome.
Some of it's turned around, not the way I originally wrote it.
Look
but
at
like,
her. She's already on it.
I know. I'm like, oh, okay. It's
She's a
interesting,
true
yeah,
writer
to hear
at
it.
heart.
Yeah, it definitely brings the last book in a lot quicker, a lot more quickly than the way you had written it originally, Geraldine. But I like the quick summary too up front. I can't wait to read it. I can't wait to read the final edited version. I'm
Yeah.
excited.
Yeah. And Letitia, how do you feel hearing it?
Oh, my round of applause for all of us.
Oh,
That
you
was
gave you a
awesome.
round of applause.
Yes.
Well, congratulations
Big
to
pats
you.
on the backs for all of us.
Well, I can't wait to read it myself, the full book. Well, this is how we're going to close the podcast today, leaving with that reading there, hoping for more will come soon. We'll be reading the full book soon. Well, as we close this podcast, we want to give the authors a chance to share with each other what it meant to you personally, being able to meet new friends and work on this story together. You have 1 minute each to just share with each other how it was.
Well, like I said before, I really liked getting to know each of these ladies, and then also getting to know them through their writing and how the things they contributed to the writing, and then also getting to know them through the brainstorming, and then going through the whole process together, and like seeing Letitia all lit up about writing her first novel. And it's just it was just really fun to do something like that together with people I only just met. That was really interesting. And everybody was very accepting and open, and we got along, and we were actually kind of glad when the group got accidentally cut down to only 4 people, because some people had to drop out. It was easier then to just have 4 and to just work together and make decisions together and do it. And so and even though we had to write extra to make up for the people, I think we were glad in the end.
Yeah. Monica, how was it for you?
I am so grateful for these women. Like I don't have any writer friends before, but now I do. And I don't even know how to express my gratitude to them, really. I'd been wanting to write something for a really long time. I'm gonna cry. And these women made it so much fun. They really did. I think if it was alone, I may not have had as much fun, because like Geraldine said, just seeing Letitia's joy and just being able to laugh at how we were creating these people on paper, and just having people to share that with, it was so fulfilling, deep in the soul. Yeah. So I appreciate them, and I wish Sarah was here to hear this too. Just everything that they brought, I appreciate. And I hope that we do our own little retreat and write another book together next summer. I'll fly to Colorado. We'll book on a mountainside. It'll be great.
Wow. How about you, Letitia?
Like I said before, it was just an outstanding experience. I learned so much from these ladies that I can use in just everyday life and writing. Just being able to step back out and connect with others without being too much in my head. So it was just really awesome just to have the openness and the flow and there was no judgment. There was no drama. It was just really fun. That was just the real basis of it, of having fun and connecting and learning. So, I got much love for you ladies. Sending some love, writer love.
Oh, I'm so happy for you guys, and I'm very excited for the book. Well, as we close, we want to say thank you so much to our authors and guests. Eyes of Death 2 will be available for pre-order at www.smsnovel.com/eyes2 on Monday, June 20th. Save the date, Monday, June 20th. Do any of you have any questions for any guests? Any questions to throw to each other?
I was wondering if Dawn could answer the question about what your original message that you wanted the reader to get from it, from the first book.
I think boils down to one word: control. Think about who Hannah was in the first novel, prom queen candidate, sort of popular, great, and running in track and whatever else. She was #1 girl. And part of that, what she was trying to control everything, like her boyfriend, her mom. So the bottom line is, to me, she had to learn that there's certain things she can't control in life. One of the things she can't control is someone dying, someone that's going to die. There's no way she could stop that from happening. So that was my thinking, is just to show a different way of dealing with control and accepting it. She can't control how people are going to die, when they're going to die. It's basically it.
Yeah. Thank you so much for that, Don. And, just thank you for writing the first book. And thank you, ladies, for joining and writing this sequel that we're very much looking forward to. Now, as I said, Eyes of Death 2 will be available for pre-order at www.smsnovel.com.